All right, what's up, my peeps? Joshua Smith here. Thank you so much for tuning in to GSD Interviews. Before we jump into this interview, I want to give our sponsors a quick plug that make this show possible. So our first sponsor is our real estate software, www.perfectstormnow.com, the most affordable and effective lead generation software out there. This isn't just a website. Yeah, we've got a website. Yeah, we've got a blog feature. Yeah, we have testimonials and video client testimonials feature. We have community pages. We have all of the typical website stuff. Where we differentiate ourselves is on the lead generation. We teach you how to lead generate. The system is extremely effective with lead generation. We can teach you how to go out there and generate more leads than you can handle without spending a penny on lead generation, right? Not only, though, do we teach you how to lead generate, not only is it a great website, it's a coaching platform combined with software. So we have two monthly live training sessions that are 2 hours long with myself personally. So we teach you how to use the site, how to generate with the site, how to leverage the site. And it goes deeper than that. Okay, I'm getting all these leads. What do I do? What do I say? How do I convert these leads? So we go and train you and coach you on every aspect of that so you can go out there and dominate it in your business. You have access to me, my developers on a daily basis as a customer of ours. So it's $99 a month, no contracts, no registration fees. It's month to month, $99 a month. You can't beat it, right? So go check us out, www.perfectstormnow.com. Our next sponsor is my personal mentorship. You know, if you're ready to take your business, your life, your career to the next level, we've got my 90-day mastery boot camp, which is a mentorship with me personally. Every single week, it's 3 hours or 2 hours of live coaching and training with me, and then 1 hour live Q&A. You have daily access to me and our private mastermind. We build out your playbook, every aspect of the residential real estate business, from how to lead generate to how to lead follow-up to how to do your presentations to how to build out your database. We even start talking about how to grow a team, how to hire, how to fire. There's nothing that we do not cover inside that program. Then after the program's done, after the initial 12-week program's done, it's an ongoing platform. It's $50 a month where you have access to me for as long as you want. You know, right? And in that $50 a month program, you guys, I've made that where $50 a month is more powerful than a $1,000 a month coaching program that you can get anywhere else. So we do 4 hours of monthly coaching at $50 a month. So you get 4 hours of live coaching. We have 2 in-person masterminds here in Phoenix, Arizona. They're every 6 months. It's a private mastermind with me and only the alumni bootcamp members that are part of the mentorship. We don't bring in guest speakers. There's nothing to sell. There's none of that crap that we all get at all these other seminars that we go to. You usually go pay $500 to a seminar and they try to sell you a bunch of shit. That's not what this is. This is hardcore masterminding. This is a hardcore mentorship, mastermind, and growth program. So if you guys want to learn more about that, www.90daymastery.com. Hope to see you guys in the program. All right, let's jump on into the interview. Hopefully you enjoy this as much as I did. What is up, my peeps? Joshua Smith here with another GSD interview. Every single week we interview top entrepreneurs and just straight up top badasses. You guys, they're out there dominating their space, that are doing the big things in this world, that are choosing to not live a life of mediocrity, but to go out there and create big things for themselves and for their families. So today we have an amazing entrepreneur himself, but also coach, consultant, coaches a lot of other entrepreneurs to go out there and create that success that they want for themselves and their families and their world. So really stoked on it. I have Frank Bria on the podcast. Welcome to the show, my friend.
Hey, thanks, Joshua. Thanks so much for having me. Total honor to be here. Thanks.
Yeah, no, this is awesome, man. We're just rapping a little bit before. We're in the same place, same area.
That's right.
Which is such a small world, man. So this is super cool. So I know you got a lot going on. You know, you do a lot of speaking, a lot of coaching, consulting. You're a best-selling author. Got a lot of stuff going on in your world. But I'm sure it wasn't always this way. So before we get into what's going on today, man, let's rewind the clocks. Like, how did this journey begin? How did you get started in entrepreneurship in the first place?
Yeah, you know, I've always had this entrepreneurial thing going on in my head, even though I didn't really know it. You know, I mean, I always thought it was going to take this very traditional path. I actually studied mathematics. I was going to be a math teacher. I taught actually at university for a while, but I always sort of had something on the side, right? And anyone who's an entrepreneur totally gets that, like, side gig thing. So even when I was teaching, I kind of always had something on the side. And I kind of always knew that was going to be, I mean, it started back when I was 10. I think everyone knew it. I swear, I got birthday gifts of office supplies. Like I had this like walk-in closet as a 10-year-old, and it was like made up as an office. Totally, it seemed lame at the time, but now I'm like, that's right, man. I was an entrepreneur.
Yep.
But when I got out of academia pretty quickly, because I just knew it wasn't my pace. I wanted more. I wanted to pull in all different parts of my life. I wanted to engage in different things and talk about business and talk about all these other things. And so one of the my first entree into business was I started working at a consulting company, and they taught me everything that I now know about consulting. I mean, they taught me how to sell it. They taught me how to position it, how to prep the documents for delivery. Like every little tiny little thing I watched everything they did so that I could figure out how to do it myself. And again, almost instantly, I was like, okay, I got to go out and do this. And so I started my first company full on, like I'm doing this full time back in 1999. And, it was .com boom. Everything was like, you could basically trip over money. I mean, there was so much money changing hands. And so, of course, I was a tech company because everyone was in 1999. And things were going great. Like we went from nothing to having like an office and like 5 employees, and we were landing contracts and stealing business from people, and it was awesome. And we didn't really even know who we were. We were a web company, and that's all we needed because we were collecting money. Well, 2001 happened and everything changed. And, we lost all our contracts. Everything dried up. Our competitors were going out of business. I remember we'd come into the office in the morning and we were like, who went out of business last night? And we were watching people clearing out their offices. And we thought initially like, oh, awesome, man, that's going to be great for us. But it turned out to be bad across the board. And, there was a day where I took me and a couple of partners and we went to lunch, and it was like, listen, it's Monday, payroll's due on Friday. We've got like $35 in the checking account, and we have a payroll of like, $8,000. How in the heck are we supposed to get that taken care of in the next 4 days? And, we didn't have any good answers, and everyone ponied up cash, and we tried to figure out how to keep it going. But the one thing that we learned through that process was that, we had basically been lazy about our positioning. We basically like, okay, we do websites, and yeah, I do marketing strategy, and we've got a graphic designer, and hey, but we didn't do any work to position ourselves. We didn't know who we were. We didn't care who our clients were. We basically would take anyone with a checkbook. And all of that mattered. All of that really mattered. And so it was a couple of hard months, but we took a real good long look at what we were doing and distilled it down to the unique strategy that we were actually providing. And we threw away the website stuff and we went straight for the marketing. And we said, okay, so we do marketing strategy, and we put it together and we communicated it clearly in a way that really made some sense. And at the end of that, we went from basically being broke with no website clients to, we had a 2-day seminar in Vegas where people were flying in, paying $700 for 2 days to listen to us teach the strategy we'd been using to market. And that actually became the intellectual property that some of which I still teach today. Yeah. So it's survived. Some of that IP has survived, what is that, 20 years or something, 15 years? I'm not that old, am I? Jeez.
Yeah, I love it, man. Sometimes the best ideas or best strategies come when, really our backs against the wall, man, because we don't learn from our successes. We learn from those low moments, and it really wakes us up, man. So love it, love it. So before we kind of dive into some of that transitions and that, man, I'm really curious about, because you've got a great job teaching at a university. And a lot of people probably would have loved probably living a very comfortable life. Yep. But you had this like burning, desire deep down to be this entrepreneur. But I mean, what was going on internally when you decided to fully make that switch? What was that like? Because a lot of our listeners are there, man. I mean, they're in corporate America, but they also have this, side job. And their vision would be to get full time into the entrepreneurial world, but maybe they don't know how to do it or what to expect with that.
Yep, totally. And it wasn't, the first time I've had to make that jump. The trick with consulting is that oftentimes, you have one client that kind of sucks you in, and then you have to kind of get rid of that client in order to expand out your business again. And you basically have to make the same decision. Like, do I quit this client? Do I fire this client in order to build something else out? Look, here's the big challenge for people, and I know it's really tough. People either, people feel like they've got this binary choice, right? You either have to pull the cord and bail out with no safety net, or you feel you're doing this side thing. But the problem with the side thing for most people is that it never really happens, right? They just you don't have enough on the line to make it your full priority. And so, as things happen with everybody, like you have a lot of priorities during the day, lots of things happen, and you start making decisions about what you're going to pay attention to and what you're not going to pay attention to. And when you have a full-time job and a side gig, guess what people pay attention to? They pay attention to the full-time job or their family or their hobbies. They still want to have a life, right? And so that side gig ends up not getting the attention it needs. What I have found that really works to make that transition happen is to plan it out. So first of all, you have to have a really solid idea about what you're going to do, right? That business has to be tested, has to be validated. And by the way, you don't have any validation until someone pays you money, okay? So you have to get cash from somebody that lets you know you've got something that's actually reasonable. Once you have that figured out, you need to start creating milestones and figure out that path. If you sit there and say, well, I'm going to quit my job when I can afford to, it'll never happen. It's just not going to happen. So create milestones, and those milestones should slowly detach you from that job. You should be able to say, okay, well, when I have this amount of money, I'm going to take 2 weeks vacation and just go hit it hard, right? I'm going to take my 2 weeks, maybe unpaid vacation in order to hit it hard because I've got enough money coming in to cover those 2 weeks. Whatever it is, set those milestones, make a plan, make it intentional. If you don't, it's just not going to happen.
Yeah, I love it, man. Love it. So, okay, so, you make that transition. You're out there grinding. Things are going good. You come amongst some tough times, $35 in the bank. You got $8,000 of a payroll, whatever that was, do the next day. When you're going through those tough times, man, what was keeping you staying focused and driving and pushing? Because so many people, break and crumble in those moments. Like,
totally.
Let me just go back to my university teaching job, make that good money. We're like, dude, how did you not give up and stay focused and keep pushing and keep that internal self-confidence?
Yeah, look, there's two things, I think. The first is you got to want it more. You've got to have that vision out there, and you've got to say, this is what I'm going to achieve, whether, come hell or high water, I'm going to go after it. And if you don't feel that in like every bone in your body, then hard times they're going to take you off track. They just are. So that's the first thing. Is like, you just have to have this hunger for that goal and just say, I want this more than relieving the pain of today. That's got to be more important to you. But the second thing is that's not enough. Like, I know there's a lot of people who are, it's like, just get up every day and grind it out. I think that's great. But I do think there's one more step, and that's a complete understanding of the principle that it's those hard times that are actually putting the pieces in place for you to be successful in the future. I can't tell you how many stupid mistakes that I made in my business getting up and running, which now form the basis of processes and procedures and things to help avoid that from happening in the past, in the future, because I made that mistake once before. And it is totally about realizing that whatever is going on right now, use that to learn, use it to figure out, don't just suffer, but use it to learn and make sure that whatever is happening today doesn't happen in the past or in the future. If you, for example, today, you don't have any clients. Well, why not? Like, what happened? What fell apart in your sales and marketing process? Did you just run out of time because you were so busy working on clients that you forgot, you weren't paying attention to sales and marketing? Did you assume that a contract was going to renew, but it wasn't before it actually did? What are all those assumptions that you made that got you in this spot? And then put the pieces in place to make sure it doesn't happen again.
Yep, love it, man. So you have your Vegas event, and that was a big turning point, right? You started selling those out of desperation to keep everything alive, but then that was a big aha turning point. So you go to Vegas, you deliver there. What was it like after that? like, what did you guys do, you and your partners, to really come together, get clarity on that vision from that experience, and then what did you start executing on to create that success?
So what we realized is that we had a system, and that was the thing that we had never realized was important before, and people are actually looking for it. And I think marketing was different back in 2002 than it is today, but fundamentally, this idea of having stage-wise marketing, we realized we had a system, and that system was valuable to big corporations. And so that's what I really started to get focused on is, okay, so let's now take the system to Fortune 500 multinationals, where we could start getting big money, right? Because when that big money comes in, then you can do some of the other stuff, right? There's kind of those two business models. And we actually had this debate internally at the company. Do you do more $700 Vegas events, okay? Or do you go chase after like 3 or 5 people who are going to pay you like 300 grand to go implement this? And there was a lot of debate, like which one do you do? And I think what we learned from that was the small model, as I call it, where you start with small dollars and you kind of build up as many people as you can. That has some challenges with it, right? So first of all, you're fighting hard for every customer, and they're bringing in $300, $500, $700, $1,000, $2,000. That's great, but it's not enough to kind of build a business off of. You need more cash coming in. And since you now need not 3 clients, but like 30 clients or 300 clients, you have to make some investments in automation and marketing way early. But if you go for the big ticket stuff, which is now like my big, like I have like a passion around going after big ticket, you do 3 to 5. You don't need to have 30, right? Because if I can get a couple $100,000, I can do that with a couple of clients. There are risks, there are scaling issues and all that stuff, true. But to start off with, it's a so much better position. So that was like the first big strategic decision we made is, hey, let's go after the corporates. Let's go after the big folks and actually spend a good, probably the next 10 years just dealing with, the largest tech companies and financial services companies on 4 continents all around the world. Eventually grew to a place where I was the, hey, Frank, we need you in Johannesburg in 3 days guy. And that comes with its own set of issues. But that was what came out of the decision to really go big.
Now, so you start going big. The tech bubble happened, and you guys had this new model. How was that model with the next crash that we had? 2008, 2009 was it hard to get those big tickets to pay that kind of money because they're scaling way down? Did you have to reinvent yourself again?
Well, I'll tell you, actually, that is one of the reasons why I ended up making an international pivot, because everything in the United States basically dried up. So I was fortunate enough to have some contacts in other places. And so I started to actually do some projects in other areas of the world where they weren't as negatively affected by that. So I actually spent a lot of time in India working with a bank out there, spent some time in Russia, spent some time in Europe, in South Africa. So yeah, the lesson I think there is to diversify, right? If you've got a business, it doesn't matter how small your business is, you're going to have this risk of, being focused on either one customer who, if they just cancel their contract, you're screwed, or a vertical or a geographic area, right? And so if you're overly concentrated in one spot, then you can really have trouble with that. And so, yeah, that was a big thing that we had to figure out during the 2008 to 2010. And because we had really become known in the financial services space, I mean, you could basically scratch the United States off the map.
I love it, because your story is just living proof that to become a successful entrepreneur, you got to be willing to adapt and really reinvent yourself, pull out that blank piece of paper and continue to reinvent yourself. Sometimes daily, right? So what does that look like? Like how do you guys pay attention? Is this like a daily reflection, weekly reflection, monthly reflection with you and maybe your other partners, just to make sure that you guys are staying on the right course, or if you need to shift courses?
Yeah. So what we do is that we have a planning exercise that I kind of execute and with my team, and we basically, it's kind of a weekly exercise, but then we have other like quarterly and yearly, those exercises will become bigger. But the way we started is this. So from a blank sheet of paper, we look out 3 years, because I just don't think you can see past 3 years. It's just really tough to, I mean, it's great to dream about 5, 10 years out, but 3 seems to be this limit, right? So we start there, and that's very vision oriented. That's like, what is my life like? What are we doing? What am I spending my time doing? What's the business into? What problems are we solving, right? So we start there, then we back it up to 12 months, and we say, okay, so what is the actual execution plan that we would have to have in place in order to achieve that 3-year vision? So in 12 months from now, what products do we want to be selling? What revenue do we want to be generating? That sort of thing. Then we bracket up to 90 days, which is our projects, because you can kind of get projects done in 90 days, right? And we don't want projects to go past 90 days. So what projects do we have to execute in the next 90 days to get us to the 1 year? And then those projects are made up of basically weekly tasks. And on those weekly tasks, I basically have us focus on 3 things a week, and that's it. I want 3 things on the list every week, and we get them done. And that way we don't have tons and tons of stuff that we're not getting to. We're not like forwarding tasks to the next day, because they didn't get done. But those 3 things always are aligned with the 90-day projects, which are aligned with the 12 and the 3-year visions. And basically I have a piece of paper. It's up on my wall. Like every day it's there. And every week we put a new sticky note with 3 new bullet points, and we just cross them off as we go.
Yep, man, I love that. So, all right, so recently you wrote a book,
Yeah.
right? What inspired you to write the book, man?
Yeah, so what inspired me was the next complete disaster business-wise for me that inspired me to. So, after the international focus, business was great, things were great, I was everywhere, but I was actually in Kiev in Ukraine doing a consulting engagement there. And I got a text message from my wife as I was in the meeting, and she had already driven herself to the emergency room. They had to operate. She was being admitted to emergency surgery, and my kids were home alone. Now, my kids aren't little kids, they're teenagers, but still, she's in surgery. I'm halfway across the globe. And I was like, one of those horrible things you think about if you're in a business meeting, like what would ever happen if you had to like stand up in a business meeting and say, I'm sorry, everybody, I know you've flown here for this, but I'm canceling the meeting and I'm going to the airport right now. It was like that moment. So went to the airport, got on a plane, from Kiev back to Phoenix is not exactly a straight shot. So 36 hours of transferring from plane to plane to plane to get back to Phoenix gives you a lot of time to think about what you've created. And I realized that, look, I've created this great business, but I didn't create the life that I wanted out of my business. It has taken this path as consultant that I was selling myself and my time. And the funny thing is that I was teaching my customers to do the opposite. So why had I actually not created that in my own business? So the book's called Scale. It's based out this idea that, I learned, hey, I've got to somehow create a scalable concept for my business in order for me to have the life that I want. If I'm just selling me and my time, number one, I'm, in a best case scenario, my income will just be limited. But in a worst case scenario, I won't have a life. And that's the problem that I talk about, how service businesses can create a scalable business.
So when you decided to change your business model, and quit trading time for dollars.
Yep.
Did you create what you learned into some type of a product and sell like a digital product, or was it more of a group environment that's done virtually with the consulting? What would that transition look like?
Yeah, so that's a great question. I mean, basically, I took the information that I had already known about scaling marketing and sales, because I've been teaching it all over the world. And then started to apply it to myself and made all sorts of stupid mistakes along the way, right? So like the first thing I did, and I again, you think back and you're like, that was such a stupid thing to do. First thing I did is call up all my clients. It was like, hey, I'm not traveling anymore. Is that cool? And of course, half of them fired me, right? So now I've got income loss and I'm trying to make it up someplace else. So I realized I'm going to have a new target market. And so I basically try to play I got to have both, right? I got to have this income and I got to have this income over here. And they realized that, the old income that I was still selling my time sucked, and I didn't like to do it. It wasn't any fun. And my clients sort of figured that out, and that I wasn't really focused on it anymore. And the other half of them fired me. So now I'm left with basically zero, and I've got to rebuild from scratch. And what I did is I said, hey, I've got to teach this process, right, that I'm going through. And I've been teaching big corporations, but now I want to talk to other consultants like me, other experts and coaches who have the same kind of problem. And the problem shows up as either I've got feast or famine, right? Like good months, bad months, like three, like I get a good month and then 3 bad months. It's I always joke it's never the other way around. You never have like 3 good months and just 1 bad month. Or I basically hit an income barrier and I can't get past it. I mean, I've had a lot of people say to me, Frank, I know I should be making more money. I just can't figure out how. I take on a new client, but it ends up I have to bring somebody on, and so I'm actually paying the same amount out I'm getting in, and I'm actually losing money on the process. So it's about scalable services. So we created now a boot camp that's for management consultants who are looking to pivot out of the project-based revenue model. Instead of charging 50 grand, 80 grand, 100 grand for a project, they want to create a scalable service model so that the next client they bring on isn't like taking up another 6 months of their time. It's a 12-month program. We have 4 milestones they have to hit in order to build that scalable model. And the best way to describe it is kind of a group coaching model, but it's a combination of coaching and training and live events and calls that really get them focused on what they're doing. And so we work with them for 12 months to get there.
Yep, love it, man. So I know in the book you talk a lot about growing that business with scalability and working less hours. And a lot of people want that. The word today is balance, and sometimes I'm like, I don't know. I don't know if that exists. Who knows what that looks like? Or maybe you got to give a certain amount of hours to be able to get that, and it's kind of a give and take thing. What are some of those steps? Somebody is, because I've met so many high income earners, but they're miserable. They're like, man, I'm working 120 hours a week, and they don't know how to scale that back. So is it, systems, technology? What are some of these things that people, maybe listeners, can start implementing to get some of their life back?
Yeah, totally. So there's 4 things I talk about. Number 1, first of all, you have to start with the concept, okay? Because a lot of people are in a business that just won't scale, right? So if, for example, if I'm a project-based consultant, or if I'm, a by-the-hour web designer or something like that, that's just not going to scale, right? You're going to run out, right? So we have to start with the concept, figure out how to distill down your expertise in a way to help your clients achieve their outcome in a scalable way. So that's the first thing. And this is hard for people. And I tell people, oftentimes the business that you built to launch is not going to be the business you can grow. You're going to have to pivot. There's a reason people talk about pivoting all the time. It's a necessary part of the process, right? So that's the first thing. Second thing, then we need to work on your revenue model, because without the right cash flow, you can't scale. You have to have a stable, diverse, recurring income stream. So that means we need to sometimes change how you charge for things in ways where cash is coming in over time. Sometimes you have to work on the value proposition so you can justify the cash coming in over time. And we need to look at diversification. So I tell people, listen, if you've got more than 10, 20% of your income coming from one client, you're going to have trouble, right? Because that one client basically holds the cards. And everyone knows what that feels like, right? I mean, the one client is kind of that jerk client. You're like, I just want to fire him, but I can't because that's like 20% of my revenue. So that's the second thing we have to shore up. The third is then we have to generate a machine that basically culls the market for more and more leads. So this is where marketing automation really comes into play. And there's great folks who teach all about this and how to put that in place. But once you've got that business model in place, we have to execute it with machine that gets you leads on a consistent flow basis. Finally, it's all about processes and procedures. So your goal should be to basically fire yourself from your business. Take a look at every single thing that you do. And I have my clients actually do a green, yellow, red diagram on a flow chart. Red means it's me and it's all me. Green means someone else is doing it. Yellow means I'm doing it, but someone else probably should. And the goal is to, of course, make it all green. And sometimes that requires rethinking how you actually do what you do so that you can take every single one of those boxes and mark them green. Because only until you can fire yourself are you truly free. Do you own a business? If there's a red box, that's your job.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's so I don't want to, it's it's sad, if you will, but that's most entrepreneurs' world, right?
Yeah.
And they're solo entrepreneurs, and yeah, they're technically an entrepreneur, but yeah, they, like you said, they have a job and they don't have a sellable product. I see entrepreneurs all the time that grind their ass off for 40 years, and then they're done. And like, okay, I guess we'll just close up the doors. They have nothing to sell, nothing to show for it, and it is sad. It truly is.
It is.
So, where do our listeners, man? Because I highly recommend the book, right? Because it's one of those things. It's like the book, The E-Myth, right? There's so many things where you've got your chef, but they never focus on how to be a great restaurant owner.
Yeah, exactly.
And with your book, it's very similar to that. So I highly recommend it to our listeners to go out there and get it right away. What's the best place to go to get the book and to learn more about the book?
Yeah, thanks. I appreciate that. So it's available on Amazon or Barnes & Noble online, so you can go get it there. But if you want to see, sometimes we have special offers, and we actually have a video training series that goes along with the book that you can get for free. If you go to scalebookoffer.com, you can see kind of our if we're running promos, or even if you buy it online, if you go back to scalebookoffer.com, you could register the book and get free access to supplementary video training that actually talks through the details of how you structure a scalable offer, how you create a scalable business model that's there. So that's just sort of extra part of the book.
Yep, love it. So those of you watching or listening, the link will be right below, so you guys can just click that link and go there. So let's talk about your coaching platform, the bootcamp style, the group coaching program. I love it, man. I mean, I think it's any entrepreneur, it's something that they really need to be focused on, because again, it's like there's so many people are struggling out there, but I'm like, man, it's because you're 85, 90% there. You're just missing that 15 or 10% off, and I think your boot camp can really help with that. So let's talk about that, man. I mean, what does it all entail? I know you said it's 12 months. What does it look like cost-wise? Are they something that you only do so often? What can people learn more about it if they want to sign up for it? What does that look like?
Yeah, sure. So at our sort of ultimate boot camp is our 12-month boot camp, and it's based on 4 big milestones we want people to hit, right? So we want them to, what we call, getting clear on your offer, landing your first few sales, running your marketing machine, and building your audience and authority. And you hit those milestones by actually doing something. So we've built this entire program around action taking. That's, I think, what's missing a lot of times in entrepreneurial education, is you learn some stuff and you sort of sit at your desk and you think, well, yeah, that'd be awesome, man. But so it's all about action taking. So the way it's set up is that for each of those milestones, there's training and assignments that each boot camper has to do. We have calls. We have 5 calls a month where people get help. I just had one this evening with my boot campers. And then there's a Facebook group where they can post stuff, get feedback. We all kind of jump in and help. But that all leads them to this milestone. And the milestone, as I said, is an action. So like, for example, on getting clear on your offer, the action they have to take is that they go have 7 conversations with their ideal client about what it is that they do and get feedback about their offer, okay? And then they bring that feedback back so that we can do something with it. So to get them ready for that, they do these assignments, and then they get on a one-on-one coaching call with us, where we green light them and basically go, okay, tell us where you are, tell us what you're doing. And then we say, okay, yep, you're ready to do this. Or maybe we may make some adjustments, or maybe we send them back and say, you know what, go redo assignment number 3, come back, and then we'll get you ready to go. But we want to make sure when they go out to the market to actually do what they're supposed to do, that they're ready. Because we just feel like that's the key. We don't want to just send people out and go say, oh, go make some sales calls when you're not really ready for it, right? So those 4 milestones take you over, we think about 6 to 9 months worth of support. So getting clear on your offer, landing your first few sales, we want people to be out there having 20 sales conversations, closing 3 to 5 new clients. And because we tell people they should be doing high ticket offers, that means putting somewhere between $30,000 and $60,000 in your pocket. And our goal is to have that done in 90 days. Then our third milestone is to actually have this machine that's generating a constant flow of leads. So run your first webinar, run your first, launch your video series, whatever it is that you're going to do to automate that process, that has to get done. Build your audience and authority. In my opinion, if you're a consultant, coach, or expert, you need to have a book and a speech in your back pocket. So we talk about what's your book going to be? What's your speech going to be? Let's put a plan in place to have you get that done, because there isn't any seven-figure entrepreneur I know in this space that doesn't have that plan already ready and running. So we want to make sure that as they get to that seven-figure mark, which is the goal at the end of the boot camp, that they have authority and they're building an audience and how to build an audience. So that's what we do. We get together 3 times a year, kind of in boardroom style. We call them revenue generation events. So, we're like, hey, John needs to generate 50 grand in the next 6 months. Let's all figure out how he's going to pull it off. Make sure that we kind of tactically jump in on that stuff. And it's a really nice community. It's a good group. So they stick with us. And then, so, you asked about cost. Basically, our boot campers pay $12,000 to be a part of that for the year. But what a lot of people do to get started is they start off with the first 2 milestones. So before they jump into a 12-month program, we give them the 90 days. We give them 6 months to execute it, but it should be done in 90 days. It's our launch pad. That's a lot cheaper. People can get started for that for basically $500 a month. And so they'll start in with that. They'll start generating some revenue, and then they say, okay, yeah, man, this is working for me. I totally want to keep it going. I want to scale it up. And then they'll bounce up into our boot camp that way.
Yeah, I love it. And some people might be hearing, oh, 12 grand, that's a big chunk.
Yeah.
But guys like you and I that are in the digital space that have done this, I don't know about you, but it took me probably 150 grand of mistakes to even start to get it. So it's like, I always tell people, like, what is it costing you to not invest the 12 grand?
Yeah.
You got college kids today going and putting themselves in 6 figures of debt to go out there and get a $30,000 a year job.
Totally.
Totally. It's to me, it's just so silly to not go out there and invest in the right program, the right system. So what's the name of the website, man, to go learn more about it and to jump on there if they do want to move forward with it?
Yeah. So if you just go to my website, frankbria.com, that's where you can get more information. You click on the mentor tab. And mentor is where you go. Basically what we do is for that, when we first sort of talk to people, we start them out looking at that first program, right, the launch pad. And so if you go to mentor, what you do is you fill out a quick application. It lets us know a little bit about you, where your business is, the struggles that you're having currently. We jump on a 15-minute call with you just to kind of triage really quickly where you are, what your issues are, and mutually identify, can we help you or not? Because obviously, there's some people that we're just not a good fit for. And if that's the case, we'll refer you on to where we think you can get the help you need. And then at that stage, then we kind of move to the next level and figure out whether or not the Launchpad's a good fit. Or in some cases, we have business owners who are a little bit further down the path, and they'll jump directly into the boot camp because they know it's where they want to be.
Yep. Love it, man. Love it. So going back to you personally, man, I mean, you're a dude that, you got this great system dialed in, right? And you're a guy that probably at this point in your life could just be like, I'm just going to coast for the rest of my life and have things where they're good enough. We find so often that good is, good's the worst enemy to greatness.
Yeah.
Right? And it's so easy in this world to get comfortable, get complacent, and quit pushing. What keeps you, dude, pushing and grinding, never settling, and always going after greatness?
Yeah, I don't know. It must be something about me internally, because I can't do the coast thing. Like, I don't, even when things go well, you know what it is? It's 2 things. Number one, I think there is something inside me that's always, wanting more. It's ambition or whatever you want to call it. I don't know. But like, I've made a lot of stupid mistakes. Like, I mean, a lot of them. And I don't want to go back there. And I do believe strongly that you can't coast. There is no coasting. You're either moving forward or you're moving backwards. If you're standing still, you're moving backwards, right? That's just kind of the way I'm wired. So I get nervous when I feel like we're coasting, when I feel like we're plateauing. I'm like, we're missing something. Something's not firing on all cylinders. We got to figure it out. So I think it's a combination of just a natural drive, but also just a memory of, hey, I don't want to go back to some of those mistakes. Yeah, I'm going to make plenty of other mistakes. I can make mistakes every day, but I don't want to make the same mistakes.
Yeah, no, I love that, man. And with family life, right? Because that's one thing that's tough with entrepreneurship, because it's so easy to get, you're so driven, you're so focused, it's easy to go out there and work 120 hours a week and neglect the other parts of your life. And I mean, how do you keep it balanced, man? I mean, and I hate the word balance, but how do you make sure that
Yeah.
you're not neglecting those other important relationships
Yeah.
in your world and do all this stuff that you do?
I mean, I think it's got to be a part of your vision, right? I mean, this is also something where I've made tons of mistakes. I've oversteered and done the 120 hours a week. I mean, one startup I was involved in, we were trying to get stuff out the door, and I slept 36 hours in the office, stayed in the office for 36 hours and slept under a desk and got up and did it again. But, that kind of stuff just is crazy. I mean, I don't want to make tons of waves, but there's lots of people out there who basically say you have to give up your life in order to start a company. And I just think it's BS. Yep. Who's I talking to? Oh, yeah, it was a venture capitalist that I was talking to one time, and we were trying to get some funding for one startup once. And he said, listen, entrepreneurism and families, they just don't mix. Just be ready to kind of put your family aside for a while. And I was just like, no, like, screw you. Yeah. I'm not going to do it. So I don't know if it's like I've got this attitude of being the rebel about it or something, but I'm going to figure out a way to make it all work. Now, my wife, if she walked in here in this interview, would probably say, oh no, there are definitely times where, I don't have that balance. And I remember one time, it was a Saturday morning. I think I had gotten up and I was about to go out and go jog or something. And I came into my office and I was like, oh, I'll just check an email or two. And my wife came behind me and she was looking over my shoulder and she's like, you're not really living your book right now, are you? So it's always nice to have that to kind of keep you a little bit humble. But I think it's just a matter of having that always in your head. My definition of success is somebody who can live their life in accordance to their priorities. So set your priorities and live your life according to that, and you will have achieved success. There's always more we can do, but it's just got to be having those priorities in order, and then doing things the way it is. The fact of the matter is that most business disasters or crises will survive to tomorrow. They really don't need us to throw our bodies against a wall every single time. I mean, certainly there are exceptions, but most of the time it's in our head. It's a mind game.
Yep, I couldn't agree more. I love it. I always say that success doesn't come out of sacrifice. Right? We got to sacrifice certain things, but the cool thing is we get to pick and choose what we're going to sacrifice.
Exactly.
Right? Like I choose to not go to happy hour at Buffalo Wild Wings with the buddies or watch TV or sports. So I can grind. I can grind 80, 100 hours a week, but I still have 30, 40 hours a week I can spend with my family. Exactly.
Right. Yep. It totally is prioritization.
So couldn't agree more, man. So, okay, the another thing that I get, especially from a lot of male entrepreneurs that will reach out to me that listen to the show is, they know what to be doing and they want to work and they want to do this, but they can't get that buy-in from their family. And you talked a lot about being clear in your vision. And do you have a process where maybe you share your vision and your goals with your family so they know why you're doing to get that buy-in? Because it makes it tough sometimes. Like, we're going to go do this, but we're like, holy crap, am I going to come home to divorce papers because I don't have the buy-in from my spouse? Yeah, totally. No, look, this comes down to kind of what we talked about earlier, which is, especially if you're making a transition, because this is where it becomes difficult whenever you're transitioning, right? So if I'm moving from job to entrepreneur, or if I'm moving from, entrepreneur out of my house to going to get in an office, like whatever that transition is, that's where things get rough. And again, I think it's about having a plan and having those milestones and then sharing that. Listen, okay, so we're going to make an investment in doing this. Well, that's only going to happen when this happens, right? Or I'm going to be transitioning from full-time to part-time, but it'll only happen when this happens, right? So I think having that clear in your head and then communicating is an important part of the process. And trust me, I've done it both ways. And the way of surprise sucks. Doesn't work very well. Love it, man. Love it. So outside of your book, right? And everybody go get Frank's book. Links below. Just go get it right now, right? So outside of your book, man, what are maybe some other... I know this is a tough question, but there's so many great books. But what are some of the top few books that you've read that have really had a positive impact on your business and maybe just overall life? They don't have to be necessarily business books. Yeah. No, what I'll tell you, the book that changed my business life was Michael Port's book, Yourself Solid. Yeah. It is just a phenomenal book. And what's so great about that book for me personally is, I picked up that book almost about 10 years ago, 8 years ago, read it and was like, for the first time ever, like,
holy crap, I finally see how this can actually work. So what was cool about it is, of course, I just bought the book. I didn't know, I don't know the author, nothing. But Michael was the first business person that I invested in for myself. He's the first business person I paid to actually help me mentor through what I did. And look, a lot of what's happened is because of that investment. I've met tons of people. I've gotten to know Michael. Since then, actually, Michael and I are friends. I mean, there's just bizarre things that have happened out of that investment. And I think that his book is definitely one of the things that did that for me. Another book, which I think is awesome, is Essentialism.
Yeah.
And again, you want to get down to like 3 things, right, that you do every week. Like, and maybe it should just be one thing, right? But I would say probably 2 years ago, was definitely a victim of having too much on my plate at once and trying to get too much done. In fact, there was this one month I thought, okay, well, I'm just going to like every day, I'm going to do a blog post. I'm going to do a podcast episode. I'm going to have a special lead magnet associated with it. I'm just going to get every single day. I'm going to get all that stuff done. And you know what? All that wasted effort didn't bring me anything at all. And when I finally cleared it all away and said, I've got one thing I'm going to focus on, we're going to build the boot camp, everything totally changed. So those are 2 books I would definitely recommend.
Yep, I love it, man. I love it. So let's say something happened, man. Hopefully it doesn't, but let's say something happens. Maybe the market crashes again, whatever, and you financially are totally wiped out starting from scratch.
Yeah.
Health's good, family's good, all that's great. But you're having to rebuild and start from scratch, but you retain everything you've learned over all of these years. And let's just say you got a few $100 left to go out there and rebuild. Knowing what you know now, what are some of the first things you would do immediately to go out there and rebuild this empire that you've been able to build for yourself?
Yeah, great question. I mean, to me, the most valuable thing I have is the relationships and partnerships that I've put together. So to me, that's like the biggest asset, like kill the list, kill the website, kill the product, kill everything. But if I kept the relationships intact and the people I know, that's where I'd go back again, right? Because I invest in relationships. I make sure that I'm giving more than I'm getting back. When I talk to people and meet new people, I try to always be the one who's giving first, and not an expectation of getting stuff back. And hopefully then that pays off. That pays off in dividends later with those relationships. But I wouldn't be here where I am today if it weren't for the network that I built and the partnerships I had. So the very first thing I would do is I'd go back to those folks again, and I would start adding value to their network, adding value to their businesses, starting to help them with their strategy. And then as I've done that, as I've provided some value, whether that leads to money or not leads to money, that would help me then be able to say, okay, now as I launch something, as I do something new, build something from scratch, I can go back to those folks and say, can you help me? Can you put me in front of the right people? Can you introduce me to people who are going to help me put this out there? That's what I would do first, right? It's the human connection in business that I think is the most important.
Man, I love that, right? Because we see so many people today that will go out there and try to network, but they'll go to this whatever event and they're like, "Oh, I didn't get any business out of it. It was a waste of time."
Right.
But they go out of like, give to me, not like me pouring into you.
Right.
And you obviously doing a brilliant, amazing job at this, and I feel that's one of the reasons you've been so ungodly successful with all your ventures, right? So, what kind of advice would you give to entrepreneurs in networking to connect with people to give? Like, how do I know if we're having a conversation right now? How would I identify something that you need that's maybe a strength that I can give to you, and how do you really offer that up to them to develop that relationship?
Yeah, so I think there's 3 really important things, right? So, and whenever I'm in a networking conversation, if I have the chance, and sometimes you don't, but if you have the chance, do a little pre-research, right? If you know you've got a conversation scheduled with someone, or there's someone that you want to meet, do a little digging up to understand who they are, what they do. I mean, there's so much information online about people nowadays. And I don't mean that in the cheesy way, like the old sales guys would walk into somebody's meeting and look at something up on the wall, like a fishing trophy or something, like, oh, so you like fishing, huh? Nothing, like a little deeper, like understanding what it is that they do. So have that in mind, but don't have any preconceived notions, because the second thing is, lots of questions and lots of listening. I mean, when I first have a conversation with someone, even if I've never met them before, I'm just going to ask a lot of questions. I want to know, what is it you do? Like, who do you serve? What do what motivates you? What are you trying to create? What's the vision that you have? And I try to do a lot of listening, because from there you can start to pick up those nuggets. And then the third thing is ask how you can help. I think this is just something that we don't do enough of, because we're kind of afraid that, oh, that'll mean I'll be doing work for free or something like that. But just say, hey, what can I do to help you move things along? Is there anything that I can do to help move things along? Now, oftentimes what will happen is that will prompt the other person to ask you, well, I don't know, what is it that you do? Like, what could you do to help me? And then you can get into a better conversation about it. But by just asking that question, even if the answer is nothing, people are going to be grateful that you asked.
Yep. A lot of reciprocity, man. I love it, man. I couldn't agree more. So, I know you do a lot of podcasts. You get interviewed all the time. You're coaching. You have a lot of people asking you questions. When you're doing these interviews and these podcasts, is there ever like a question that nobody asks, or like that I haven't asked, where you feel is an important question that people should ask, you wish they would ask, but it just never seems to get asked?
That's a good one. That may be actually one of them right there. I think that oftentimes in podcasts and in business education, we focus a lot. We spend a lot of time focusing on the mindset. We spend a lot of time focusing on the process, but we don't focus a lot on the value generation piece. Like, what am I actually doing in the world? And I would love for have a whole episode or something like that around, like, how do you actually create value for people? Like, how do you sit down with the process of thinking, okay, here's a group of people whose lives I want to change, right? I want to get them some great outcome. How do I get them that outcome? How do I design a product or a process or a program that gets them that outcome? Because it's, without that, there's this missing gap, right? We get a lot of really excited entrepreneurs that want to go out and change the world. They have great ideas, but they're not connecting with the people who they really want to, change lives for, in being able to connect those dots. What are the 3 steps people should take to achieve the outcome that you want, or something like that? For me, it's that program creation or product creation piece that often gets missed.
Yeah, so let's kind of go there. I know it won't be a whole podcast episode, but maybe we can make another one. I'd love to, these I always ask these questions too, because they're obviously, I mean, I'm always very, very interested in entrepreneurs, because I know how tough it is, right? And people that have created success in their world, and we get sometimes focused, and we might miss on something that we should be picking up on. And dude, I mean, you're this guy that in our short time together, but I've been following you for a while. I mean, you're a dude that always leads through contribution and giving first, and it's one thing to talk about, one thing to do about, and you're definitely doing. So I love it. So with these 3 things, that you should be doing, or whatever that may be with the product sales. Maybe you don't have a product yet. Like, how do you find that out? Do you just start interviewing everybody that you know? How do you know if you can serve them? How do you know if you can solve their problems?
That's great. So the goal is, when I talk to people and I say, if you're going to be out there doing something, you should be solving what people consider to be a 6-figure problem. Like, the problem, don't go small. Don't shoot small. Okay. So wherever you are in your entrepreneurial journey, ask yourself, stop for a second and ask yourself if you're solving a 6-figure problem. Because if you're not, it's going to be very tough, right? There are people who can take something and make small adjustments, right? Small changes to a product. There are people who create 99-cent apps for people to play and make millions of dollars. But I'll be honest with you, that's really hard work. I mean, it seems like, all I have to do is create a game or something, an app, and then I'll be rich. It's not how it works, right? I mean, ask the guys who did Angry Birds. It was like their 300th game or something like that they had created. All of them nothing until finally they hit one. So it's all about it's all about changing lives. I mean, you should be thinking, how am I changing lives? So that's a 6-figure problem. So if I'm sitting back and I think, okay, I don't really know what I want to do. I don't really know how I have a product to sell. You should start first with kind of 3 questions, right? Number 1, who do I know? right? Because you're gonna have to start with a network of people you know. What industry do I know, or what people do I know? Maybe it's just your local community. Maybe it's an organization you belong to. Maybe it's a industry vertical that you have some expertise in. Whatever it is, you should ask yourself, who do I know, right? The second thing is, what am I passionate about? Like, you need to, as we've talked about, there are a lot of bumps and scratches along the way. So if you're not passionate about the thing that you're trying to do, you are going to get lost along the way. The first wall you hit, you're going to be like, yeah, screw it, I'm out. So what are you passionate about? And that's going to lead you to the problems that you can solve because you're passionate about it, right? And then the third question you have to ask is, who cares? So that problem that you need to solve has got to be impactful for somebody in that group of people that you know. And so you're looking for this this overlap of people you know, the things you're passionate about, the problems you're passionate about solving, and then who cares enough to actually pay you to solve that problem for them. So, make 3 lists and figure out what's on every list and try to make connections between them if you're brainstorming. And then absolutely, as you said, go talk to people. Like, nobody does a good job creating a service business sitting in their office and thinking about it on a whiteboard. You have to go talk to people. You have to go say, this is what I'm thinking about, which is why, like, in our boot camp, that's the first milestone they have to hit. They got to go talk to people. That's what they have to do. You don't validate an idea till it's actually, people pay you for it. It's a very important component of business is validation.
Yep. Love it, man. Love it. So, when it comes to the coaching consulting space, and what are because it's the sexy thing now, right? I mean, you've been doing it for a long time, and you've really dialed this in. But so many people want to jump in the webinar game. They hear about all these guys making 6 figures a month and all of this, and I'm like, because when I jumped in, I'm like, look, the coaching part, the product is the easy part. It's all the other stuff. It's the building out the funnels and your marketing, and what are some of the things that you have found the most challenging that you've had to overcome that you didn't think would be a challenge when you jumped into space?
Totally. So the first thing is, I think, look, there's a lot of people out here teaching, right? Build marketing funnels for coaching and consulting and all this stuff. Tons of people. Like, you can't swing a cat without hitting somebody who's talking about that stuff. So the problem is that a lot of them are teaching marketing funnels for lower ticket products, right? So these are folks who, and by the way, they're really good at it. Okay, so like one of my favorites, Russell Brunson. He's like a master at this, right? He's master at funnel building. But he built all of his stuff around selling, supplements, health supplements, or copying someone else's kind of marketing funnel, right? Coaching and consulting is a very different game, and while he does that well, and he makes quite a bit of money off his own coaching and consulting, the funnels are different, right? So the first thing is to know is that if you're just starting out from scratch as a coach, don't build a funnel. Like, stop building a funnel. Start by talking to people, and because you're not going to even know what to write in any of those emails or any of those sales pages until you've actually had conversations. And I'm sorry, but you can't just sit down and write 3 paragraphs of a customer avatar and suddenly have your sales page figured out. You can't. You will only know that through actually talking to human beings. So it's so important that you start off by just selling person to person. And that means giving value, being there, demonstrating credibility, adding value to people's lives, and then inviting people to have a conversation with you about whether or not what you do is going to be helpful to them. But start big. I mean, start with a life-changing offer, a big ticket offer. A lot of people get this mistaken notion that it's harder to sell something big ticket than it is to sell something small ticket. The fact of the matter is, it's not. It's not that much harder. And in some cases, it's actually easier. And people kind of go, whoa, what do you mean it's easier to sell something higher price? I'll tell you why. Because there's a relationship between price and value, right? So if I'm out there selling something for $50,000, it's going to be life-changing, right? And I'm going to have to do the work to really tell you why it's life-changing and why you need to do it. Now, if I'm selling something for $39, So it was a friend of mine, Scott Oldford, who's like a brilliant guy at of internet marketing funnels. He was talking about this. He held up he's Canadian, so he held up a $20 Canadian bill, which is even less in US money, right? And he's like, dude, I waste these all the time. So if I spend $20 on your tripwire offer or spend $20 on your intro offer, I'm probably not even going to think about it afterwards. It'll like be gone. You've not changed anyone's life, right? That's the whole point. And so getting somebody to pay you $300, $500, you're not adding that much value, right? Or it's totally mispriced. So when you really do the work to put a high ticket program together, you can really, it's actually in some senses easier. But then you have the cash, and then you validate, and then you've got the money to invest in funnels and hire copywriters and do all that stuff. I think the biggest mistake I made and a lot of other people make is to do that way too early in the process.
Yep. Love it, man. Absolutely. So, I started this podcast to go out there and give people tactical, of course, motivate and inspire, but then give them not just, because it's easy to get motivated, but then it's like, right. Okay, well then, how do I execute on this stuff? Yeah. And like you alluded to earlier, man, there's so many quote-unquote gurus, there's so much smoke and mirrors, so I'm like, I just got sick of it one day. I'm like, I'm going to go create a podcast where we just go out there and we interview the doers, guys like yourself that have been in the trenches for 2 decades, that have had to overcome adversity, that are doing it, that are living proof and creating that success, and interview you about what you're doing, right? So our listeners are listening to this because they want to go out there and create something similar like you've created for themselves and their family. So with that being said, man, do you have any last words of motivation or inspiration that you'd like to leave them with so they can go out there and create an amazing life for themselves and their families like you've been able to do?
Look, I say this, it's doable. Okay. Like I think a lot of people who listen to this stuff and watch this stuff, they feel inspired by it, but they still have this idea that maybe it's not like they just can't do it. Like someone else did it, but it can't be done for me. No, it's doable. It's totally doable. And you need 3 things. You need skills, you need a mentor, and you need accountability. And if you have those 3 things, you'll be successful in the end. And, you just have to have those parts. So many people focus on the skills and don't focus on getting a mentor, don't focus on staying accountable. But if you have all 3 of those things, you're going to get it done.
Yeah, I love it, man. Powerful words. And to our listeners, I know I end every podcast with this, you guys, but information without implementation really is just the start of delusion. Information is no longer power, right? It's taking that information, executing on it, that creates power in our world. So Frank shared so much amazing info, you guys. And there's so much wealth of info here in this podcast. Take something that you learn, go out there and execute right now. Don't wait. Go execute on it so you can create the power in your will and create the life that you know you want and you deserve. And Frank, man, this has been a massive honor. I know how busy you are, dude. This has been, I've absolutely loved it. I know our listeners are going to love it, man. It's truly an honor to have you on the show, my friend.
Yeah, thanks so much, Josh. I appreciate it.
All right, you guys, we will see you next time. Talk to you soon.